What's going on, everybody? So today I want to show you guys my favorite team that I came up with when messing with Hu Tao synergies. I spent the last couple days kind of playing around with different kits and things, and this was the one that came out on top for me personally. It's not the craziest highest damage, but it has a ton of sustainability, and for those of you guys who aren't used to Hu Tao taking a bunch of self damage, this build is really sick. So without further ado, here is an extremely free to play friendly Hu Tao team. This team is fun. It involves Hu Tao being kind of a main DPS, but, well, functioning as a sub DPS because you swap her in and out, but she is the main damage dealer of this comp. So we have Ningguang in the second slot, and the reason for Ningguang is actually for a couple reasons. The first one is we get the shield for any kind of projectile things. It's not huge, but it does help a little bit. And then she also can serve as a really powerful Geo carry. And so we can use her carry potential to use burst windows when Hu Tao's E is down. So what that means is when Hu Tao is no longer in her E, you can switch over to Ningguang, and then you can use her elemental burst or just try to burst some damage. If you have C2 Ningguang, this works best. But yeah, that's what Ningguang is for in this comp. And then also creating shield shards is really nice for Hu Tao because we want her to be protected at all times. This is a low healing composition. We have very low healing output. The most healing you're going to get is actually from Hu Tao Q, and then Xingqiu also allows for us to get some healing. And Noelle, if you decide to attack with her, she does get some healing as well. But ultimately, the healing output is very low, so you want to keep shields up at all times, which is why we have Noelle. Now, Noelle is one of my favorites for this build because she allows you to keep up a really beefy shield, but beyond that, her Ascension 1 actually gives her the ability to immediately shield any character who falls below 30% of their HP. So with Noelle here, what happens is when we use Hu Tao's E, when she's below 30%, she gets a shield automatically from Noelle that covers 400% of Noelle's defense. And you'll see my build on Noelle in a little bit. But what's really important about that extra defense is that it allows Hu Tao to go in and not take any damage or punish her when she's spamming charged attacks, which is the most important part of her kit. And as you guys know, at C0 she consumes a lot of stamina. I have her C1, so this team works extra well for me, but I completed Spiral Abyss with C0 Hu Tao using this because it wouldn't punish me for not being able to dash. Noelle C6 isn't necessary, but if you have C6 Noelle, she becomes a functional DPS as well, and Ningguang serves as a battery for her, as well as Noelle giving you Geo Resonance, so when you are shielded, you're going to be doing extra damage. Xingqiu functions as a shielder, sub-healer, kind of DPS mix. He's all around just an amazing character for this team comp, but what he allows you to do is constantly vaporize with Hu Tao because of how Hu Tao's animation works. You're almost always going to be vaporizing. And of course, when the shields are up, you get damage taken reduction, which is really helpful in Hu Tao because she's going to be low health. And then when his swords disappear, you get a little bit of healing based on your talent level with Xingqiu. So for Ningguang's set, I'm actually using a broken set just for stats because her set doesn't matter too much as long as you're getting the 15% Geo bonus for Petra and then whatever bonuses you can get. Gladiator's 18% attack bonus is a nice little add-on, but not completely necessary considering that substats can actually outdo that. So if you have artifacts with incredible substats, use those over the 2-piece Gladiator set. So I'm running 2-piece Petra, and ideally I will be running 2-piece Gladiator, but in the meantime, my focus is on the attack percent Sands, the Geo damage bonus Goblet, and the crit damage Circlet. As goes for any DPS build, though, you do want to double check what your crit rate and crit damage is like. You want to have a 1-to-2 ratio, and if you can't get above 40 crit rate and 80 crit damage, it's worth building attack over crit damage, and try to just keep that ratio. That's really important. As for free-to-play weapons with no gacha pulls at all, the best weapon for you is going to be Frostbearer for her just because it has the attack percent bonus, which is really nice, and the other craftables don't necessarily have that. But if you do have some gacha pulls, Widsith is going to be probably your best bet. It has a crit damage stat, and its passive is a pretty decent buff. The biggest thing is to use DPS weapons on her, not support weapons. On our boy Xingqiu here, we have the 4-piece Noblesse set, and you can actually substitute 4-piece Noblesse for 2-piece Noblesse with 2-piece Heart of the Depth, but I prefer the 4-piece because it gives my entire team the extra attack percent bonus, which is really nice. The most important thing for Xingqiu is actually his weapon. To make energy recharge as easy as possible, I have Sacrificial Sword because it gives passive energy recharge, and its ability makes it so that when you use an elemental skill, the skill has a chance to reset its cooldown, and because his elemental skill generates so many particles, it's really good if you can use the cooldown twice. Realistically, here you just want anything that's going to give you energy recharge, and a lot of people will advocate for building Xingqiu as a DPS, but in this specific composition, his damage doesn't matter as much as your Hu Tao's damage because he's just there to vaporize, and you want his Q up as much as possible. If you don't have Sacrificial, maybe you've pulled Favonius from the banner, and so if you have Favonius, use that instead of Sacrificial if you don't have Sacrificial. But if you don't have either of those, use Skyrider's Sword because that one is a 3-star that functions fairly well as far as energy recharge goes. My energy recharge is around 180%, but I'm not not able to fill up my bar until I hit twice, but I also haven't fully built Xingqiu yet. This comp still works without him fully built, by the way. As far as artifacts go, I'm running energy recharge on my sands, and then I have a hydro damage goblet followed by a crit rate circlet, which I probably will end up replacing later with a crit damage one as I can. But the idea is build him like a DPS, but with really high energy recharge coming as the first priority, so that way you can have Q uptime. Noelle is amazing, and I love her, and you should build her because she makes this team composition so nice. So I actually have her C6, but it's completely unnecessary to have her C6. The only thing C6 does in this instance is make it so she turns into a DPS when you use her Q, but you don't need that for this team to function because all you need is her shield. So what I actually build here on Noelle is a defense sands, a defense goblet, and a crit damage circlet. But the crit damage circlet you're going to want to replace with a defense circlet if you don't have C6. And the reason for this is because, again, you only want her shield. To really optimize, you want to use white blind on her to get as much shield as you possibly can, so Hu Tao can literally just eat damage for days and days and days, and then go to your talents and make sure you level up breastplate because that's going to be her manual shield that you can add later. For example, if Hu Tao is low but Noelle's already used her passive, you can swap to Noelle, use her E, and then swap back to Hu Tao pretty quickly. It's not too intrusive to your gameplay, and like I said, because she has that Ascension passive that gives the shield off her cooldown, it makes it so the shields are much more manageable. Okay, so now that I've taught you about the team comp, here's how you play it. I gave you little tidbits here and there, but essentially the goal is you go into Spiral Abyss or whatever content you're clearing, you try to get Xingqiu Q up. If you can't get Xingqiu Q up immediately, you're gonna lead off with Hu Tao, and Hu Tao's just gonna do a bunch of damage. As long as Hu Tao doesn't get one hit by the enemies, you should be fine to not use Noelle's shield manually, because you do want Hu Tao to get below 50% HP, so that way her passives activate. Once she gets below 30, she does get that shield from Noelle, so as long as you're not going to get one hit from 50%, you should be okay. But if you do get a little bit worried, you can go ahead and manually pop the Noelle shield. And as soon as you have Xingqiu's Q up or his E ability up, you're going to want to switch into him, use it either between Hu Tao's cooldown or off, but most efficiently, you're going to do it after Hu Tao's E is on cooldown. Swap into Xingqiu, try to get a Q up, use his Q, swap back to Hu Tao, and then just go to town with Vaporize. Once you finally run out of Qs and Es to use between Xingqiu and Noelle, you can swap to Ningguang and either kite just to get some space and not let Hu Tao die, or you can use her as a battery for Noelle, or you can just put up shields, or there's lots of different things you can do with Ningguang. She does a lot of damage in the meantime while Hu Tao is down, and she's able to buy you time. That is her purpose. Of course, when Hu Tao's back up and you have some sort of safety net for her, whether that's Xingqiu's E or Q ability or Noelle's E ability or whatever it may be, shield shards, anything that's going to keep Hu Tao protected, you can go in there and use her E again, and you're just going to keep doing that as long as you can't take damage. Now, when you get super low and you don't have an emergency heal, you have two options. You can go ahead and use Noelle to try to heal up with auto attacks, or you can swap over to Hu Tao and use her Q, and her Q is going to net her a bunch of health regen on whatever enemies she's against. In high level Abyss, where there's less enemies, you may not actually regen that much HP, but as long as it's enough to keep you alive and out of the one hit zone, you should be okay. And since Hu Tao builds HP, the one hit zone should not be very big. But essentially the TLDR of how to play this is to use Hu Tao and her E as much as possible, while also trying to get up Xingqiu's Q as much as possible, and then use Noelle and Xingqiu and Ningguang to balance out shielding for her. Some of the shielding should be automatic because of Noelle's passive, so you shouldn't have to worry about that as much. So now that you know how to play the composition, let's say you don't have one of these characters and you want to substitute someone. If you don't have Ningguang, you can actually substitute her out for Geo Traveler. While it's not the most ideal situation, you should be able to use Geo Traveler to try and constantly get shield shards and brief moments of burst damage. For example, once you're done with Hu Tao's E, you could switch to Noelle for shield if need be, and switch to Geo Traveler, drop a rock on your enemy's head for a nice chunk of damage, because you can build Geo Traveler as a burst DPS using her or his Q or her or his E. In this case, I actually recommend the same artifacts, 2-piece Gladiator, 2-piece Archaic Petra, but for weapons, I would see if you have Festering Desire from that event that happened last year. If you didn't get Festering, almost any single sword will work. Lion's Roar isn't ideal because its passive doesn't really give you any value, but Rancor works because it gives you a physical damage bonus, which would allow you to build your Traveler as the secondary carry if need be. If you're not going to go for the secondary carry build, the Flute is probably a really good option for you just because it has attack % scaling. And then if you're a Battle Pass junkie, Black Sword is obviously very good as well. If you have to go with energy recharge swords, that's totally fine as well, but you do miss out on the attack scaling, so you will be doing slightly less damage even if you do have your Q up more, so that's a trade-off you have to decide on. If you don't have Xingqiu, you can actually sub him in for Kaya. Kaya is not the most ideal substitute because his melt is not consistent with Hu Tao's vape with Xingqiu. However, Kaya is still a very useful tool. You can build him the same way as Xingqiu, so that way he builds energy recharge, and he has that passive stat for energy recharge as well, so his uptime on his Q should be really good, and it allows you to still get some melts in there, even if it's not quite as efficient. The one thing you're going to be missing out on is shield unless you have constellations on Kaya, because Xingqiu has that damage reduction passive and Kaya does not, so you will have to play more carefully. And if you don't have Hu Tao, just pick up Xiangling and roleplay or something. Anyways, that is it for this team composition. If you've enjoyed, make sure to leave a positive rating down below and subscribe to my channel for more Genshin Impact content. I do go live a couple times a week at twitch.tv/Braxophone, so go follow me there if you're interested in live content. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you guys later.